You know, if you combine a really talented writer with a really famous historical event, you're going to get a book like this, Waterloo by Bernard Cornwell. And Waterloo, of course, is the time that Napoleon jumped in the ring with the British and the Prussians and got the snot beat out of them. Now, the way he does this book is really good. If you take three parts, three things I'll emphasize. One is, you know, his description of the battles. There were actually four of them. Ligny, that round the French won on points. Quatre Bras, again, the French win on points. Third, Wavre. I'm going to say that the Prussians won that one on points. And then you go to the final round, the actual Waterloo itself, and of course that was a total knockout by the Brits. Now what Bernard Cornwell does with all of these is he describes exactly what was going on, what the tactical decisions were made, and you really feel like you understand why the outcomes were what they were. The second thing that he does, which is really good, is he's able to explain in a very easy way, natural way, woven right into the story that he's telling, the nature of the formations that each of these armies, the British, the Prussians, and the French were using, why they used them, what their function was on the battlefield, whether it's infantry, artillery, cavalry. He does a very, very nice job of explaining all that so that the average person can understand what's going on in this 19th century battle. The second thing he does is that I think is really good, is to get into the nature of the weapons that they were using, the kinds of artillery shells that were involved, how they worked, what happened with them. Really very, very well done. And when he's doing all this, he's weaving in the stories of individual soldiers, sub-commanders, people like that. And he also, I think, in terms of his descriptions of these battles, he does a great job with maps. He's got enough of them, plenty of them, describing each element of the battle, but also, and more important, and I think anybody who reads popular military history like I do, is going to recognize this. Whatever it is he's talking about in the text is reflected in the map. I mean, how many times do you pick up a popular military history and they mention it some place on a battlefield and you can't find it anywhere on the map? You got to go to Google and whatnot to understand it. Bernard Cornwell took care of that with this book. Now, he gets into the personalities, and the personalities, he does a great job with it. Doesn't waste a lot of time on their background, but he gives you enough to understand them. And if you take the first guy, Blucher, the guy who's commanding the Prussians, he was actually an old man at the start of this battle. But, totally aggressive, very reliable, very trustworthy, and between him and Wellington, they had a complete meeting of the minds, and they each held up their end of the bargain. If you take Napoleon, Napoleon comes across to me like a superstar ball player who's at the end of his career. He plays seasons well past his peak, well past his prime, and he does nothing but embarrass himself. And similarly for his underbosses, you know, in particular Ney, he comes across really, you know, kind of a loser, in my judgment. And then finally you get Wellington, and I've got to say, I think Bernard Cornwell is a Wellington fanboy, and the way he writes up Wellington, you understand it. You're kind of on his side, and I got a slightly different take on Wellington's personality than I had before. For example, his consideration for his men and things like that. Did a nice, really, really nice job, I thought, with it. So anyway, put it all together. It's a very exciting book, very, very informative. As you can tell, I think it's very well written. He doesn't get into what ifs. You know, what if Napoleon lost? Would he still be losing to the Austrians and the Russians who are bringing big armies? He doesn't get into that. He doesn't quite answer the question as to why Napoleon really kind of flubbed it, why he was so hands-offish in terms of managing the battle. Was it just he's getting old and tired, or you know, or is hemorrhoids killing him? There's no, you can't tell from reading this. He's not taking a position on that. There's a lot of people who think hemorrhoids had a lot to do with it. Anyway, look, for American readers who may not have as much familiarity with the Battle of Waterloo as they might for, say, the Battle of Gettysburg, this is a really good book to pick up, a really good, very, very informative. Certainly recommended. See you next week.